Live from Derbyshire, this is The Sunday Lunch Show with Brent Poland, and you are listening live.
Hi there, and welcome to this is going to be our last Sunday Lunch Show.
The final one.
Final one for the Table Future. We're not leaving Teacher Talk Radio, we're just going to shift where we're going to be and what we're going to do. But this one is going to be a big special. We're going to talk about dress code, talk about uniform, we're going to talk about what should you wear to school. So let's tune it in and talk it out.
This is
Brent,
Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teacher Talk Radio. Hashtag TT Radio.
Well, I thought that was an interesting start to start today's show. As Brent said, it is our last Sunday show, but you'll find us on Teacher Talk Radio in another guise very short. But today's show is all about uniform. That's our big discussion today. And we also want to venture on to staff uniform as well, and staff dress code as well.
Yeah, because I mean, I counted this during the whole. Picked a good week for this with World Book Day. You know, what do staff wear this week? Considering that some look like pretty much half the cast of Harry Potter. Yeah. You're going down, you're seeing Service Street and Draco Malfoy, and that was the English department. So
Wednesday was the other big one. I think I saw on social media a lot of kids dressing up as Wednesday. Which begs a question sometimes with World Book Day. Is it sometimes people just come dressed as Netflix characters?
I think we just go pop culture. You know what I mean? There was a couple of, let's just be honest, there was a couple of tenuous links to literature. Although the best one, I think the prize across the country, was a little tiny chap who had the ginger hair and the ginger beard and had a picture of Prince Harry.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I think that got the award for probably.
I was going to say I went dressed as Matt Hancock.
Did you?
I thought that's a good book.
We'll get on to that later on about Mr. Hancock and obviously Sir Gavin's contempt for the teaching profession, so to speak. And of course, it was quite an interesting week. It's I tell you, every week's becoming a very interesting week, which is one of the reasons why we want to do shows that respond to topicality in education. And I think education in the next couple of months, especially as we lead up to the next cycle of elections, I think everybody's cottoned on to the crisis that's in education and the battle for the heart and soul of what's going on in our schools, because, things are, they're tough. They're really, really tough. And when we're looking at school uniforms, I mean, I come at it from a point of view of, I support the use of school uniforms from a universality point of view, the same way I support free school meals from a universality point of view, same way I support Every Child Matters, which was a thing years ago, same way I support, SEN provision, same way I support, gifted and talented. I support the idea that we want to give children as much opportunity as possible. And I like the fact that a uniform is a leveler. A uniform is one of those things that, I don't like non-uniform days because you start to then see, the kids who have got more affluence and the kids who have less affluence. I know some people do teach in schools that have relaxed the uniform, have got no uniform. Maybe their social context is that way, but maybe I'm institutionalized, that I've grown up in schools. I went to schools with strict uniforms, and I myself have, taught in a school that had a really good uniform, and a good uniform policy for now on nearly 19 years. And I
wonder if confirmation bias does come into that, because we always wore uniforms, therefore what we see as a school and what we recognise as the premise of the school is something that you're wearing a uniform.
I think it's down to the homework category. When we discuss the homework categories, it's the thing that school does is teachers set homework. You expect
so let's get a tick box. Is there a display? Yes. Is the homework? Yes. Is the uniform? Yes. Okay, it's a school.
Exactly. So
we've got that thing called
it's that institution. Then you expect your school children to wear a school uniform, but then there's also the pride aspect of the school uniform as part of the identity of the school, as part of the culture, part of the history, part of the heritage, part of the part of the DNA, the fabric of your school. Some schools, their uniform is something that is handed down through generations. The school colours. I know that my school uniform for my grammar, my 16 to 18 grammar that I went to when I got my GCSEs, I went to a grammar, and that tie is eternal. That the tie and the blazer and the symbol of it is connected to a saint as well. So you have a lot of this connection to, it's like the Centrinians thing, isn't it? And that's the thing about school uniforms. They are more than a dress code. They are part of a cultural identity and a history and a diversity of which this country has still got.
It could be an interesting thing to note if anyone can tweet in or call in today. Have you kept your school uniform? Is it something you've hung on to after everything else from your school days have gone? Have you still got a tie somewhere?
Have you still got your school tie?
Yeah.
We always handed school ties, a specific school tie at our prize giving evenings to the students. And it's quite interesting that I have some colleagues. I've got some colleagues who are ex-pupils. And one of them was a head boy, which we're now calling head person, which is great. We're moving with the times. But he still got his tie from when he was head boy, and he's now a member of staff in the school. And still, on sort of dress up days, he's still got his tie that was given to him. How many years ago now? And as an ex-pupil, I taught this person, who's now a colleague of mine, and you're absolutely right. They've still got part of their school uniform, because some parents keep the uniform as a keepsafe, and sometimes the uniform's handed down, the blazer may be handed down from child to parent. So it's more than a piece of clothing. It's kind of part of the fabric of some institutions. Obviously your public schools, they have a very different uniform, tops and tails and hats, and they've got, again, their very strict sort of etiquette about how they dress, and that's part of their culture.
It's interesting if you look at then further down the track when you get to university, you don't wear a uniform to university. However, when you come to the celebratory part of the university, you then put on a uniform, don't you? You then put on a dress code.
You put on the gown,
and
you put on the hat. And again, what comes with the gown and the hat is all the different colours. And it's almost like heraldry, isn't it? Yeah. You're part of a different faculty, and that's the colour of that faculty. You're part of that. And again, you could tell which type of degree they've had. You could tell whether they're a professor. And you're right, it's one of the rites of passage that you dress up in the gowns. Yeah. But I was reflecting on this, going like, what did kids used to wear to school when schools were first coming in, at the time of the Industrial Revolution? And yet exactly what a stereotypical head, master head teacher looked like back in the Victorian days. There was a certain look, wasn't it? The gown and the hat. So again, like society evolves, what we wear to school in some ways has evolved. But in other ways, I don't think it has. And again, there's a lot of body of research out there says, uniforms are good. It's controversial, and there's others out there that say uniforms are not. I know the United States of America, they've got no uniform. We were going to show a clip, which we can't use because it's got a bit of swearing in it. And it was the difference between going shopping with a child for their school uniform in the UK versus going for shopping for a child in America. But I know that one of my favourite, pet hates is non-uniform days, and I've talked about this before. I really don't like uniform days because it just opens up, and it's like the valve is released, and then you have to have that awkward conversation with somebody like, is that really appropriate what you're wearing? And maybe that happens because it becomes a kind of thing of, you get that one or two opportunities to fully express yourself, and away you go. And I know those that are all for free expression say, well, what? You always hear that in the news, don't you? Where every local newspaper has a news story of a child being sent home because they've got the wrong shoes, or some academy trusts taken over and they've got a new policy. And
it always seems to be once a new academy change,
new head,
it's then on the front of the paper the next day.
It's like in the handbook of being a new head teacher, the first thing you do is attack the uniform, attack the dress code, attack the hair policy. And these things are eternal, the shirts, the ties, the uniforms, what the boys wear, what the girls wear. And then, of course, what the staff wear as well. I mean, I was reading through, looking at some websites doing research on it, and some staff rooms have got very strict dress codes about this is what's expected of teachers. No tattoos on show, beards trimmed, etc. Depending on the institution you go in, also depends on how you dress as a member of staff. Equally, how you dress as a child. Yeah. And then equally, how strict the uniform is. As a rule of thumb, I'll be honest, it does seem to be that, better run schools tend to have a better uniform policy. I'll put that out there. I tend to think that's true. I tend to think that. I often said to people when they're like, why are you picking a child up and get the uniform tucked in, get the top button done up? I thought, well, I'm fighting on that. If I'm fighting them on uniform, what am I not fighting them on?
But do you not think also there's a bit of a code, like an unwritten code in terms of fashion?
Standards.
I'm just talking about kind of as a business studies teacher, I think I'm expected to wear a nicer suit than a geography teacher.
So you're I see.
Or the PE teacher, you'd expect the PE teacher to be wearing a certain outfit. Your art teacher, you'd expect
PE teacher shorts all year round. It is -10 outside. There's a Baltic weather coming in. They're still in shorts.
But is it more about, is the uniform that we wear, let's say our kind of staff code, are we projecting onto the children what we expect as a kind of what the subject does?
Old-fashioned, again, a controversial opinion, but I often say this to student teachers, and I've trained quite a few student teachers over my years, and sometimes I've had the awkward conversation. You look like a teacher, talk like a teacher, walk like a teacher, act like a teacher. Children will not look at you as a student teacher. They will assume that you're a teacher. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the
so therefore, the answer to that question is that uniform or dress code is giving authority.
Practice what you preach. Yeah. You've got to project an image that you want to be professional, that you are a person of gravitas, and you can do that by dressing, sharp. And I'll be honest, it doesn't have to necessarily mean, going in and buying the latest suit that's perfectly fitting. It's again how you hold yourself. And there are those that say your appearance does not matter. I think it does. It's like the staff room. It's like the voice thing in a classroom. You have to train people to project their voice. They have to train to project their voice to be assertive. I think it's part of the unwritten rules of teaching and the unwritten kind of the dark arts of teaching, so to speak, that you have to sometimes say to somebody, look, how you dress communicates in a way that you want to be held seriously. And I've always said that to all the student teachers I've ever taught. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just giving you some advice. It's up to you how you dress. But if you want to be taken seriously, you act like a teacher, talk like a teacher, walk like a teacher, use our phrases. You are a teacher. And it's a weird thing from a non-teaching point of view to say that there are certain things about being a teacher that comes with being a teacher. That's why we're a vocation. Same way, I'm sure it's certain things about being a police officer, certain things about being a fireman, certain things about being a nurse. It's part of our kind of unwritten code about how we hold ourselves. I mean, you know yourself. You see a kid in the supermarket screaming their head off. First thing I want to do is go over and say, and not say discipline them, but you've got that look. Yeah. And there's times actually in society when I've sometimes felt like a teacher and been that kind of assertive as a teacher. Yeah. And sort of that's who we are. And I think how you look. Stanley Milgram is a very famous psychologist, and I do put a lot of stock into what his experiments were. He was trying to do what's called a social norm, and he was trying to figure out why ordinary people, participated in things like the Holocaust. And what he was trying to figure out was, and this is quite interesting, that he discovered that 2/3 of people would follow orders from somebody in authority. Mm-hmm. And he conducted experiments on that. It was quite shocking, some of the experiments, literally shocking. Anybody who studies psychology knows what I'm talking about. But it is that subliminal message you're giving out. As an educator, if you look the part, then you are saying to that child, I'm at that level and I am your teacher. That's the boundary. And that's one of the reasons On non-uniform days, I don't come in non-uniform. On non-uniform days, I may seem like an old stick in the mud myself. I come in still wearing my professional clothes because I want to be treated like a professional, look like a professional. And I'm not, there's times to relax and times not to relax. But in school, I believe I should look the part as an educator.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've worked in lots of different types of teams since leaving university. I've worked in the kind of catering trade where chefs have a uniform because they have to for and there's a safety element to that uniform in terms of it being white, so therefore you can see hygiene. And there's also their fireproof jackets or fire resistant kind of jackets are important. But then I've worked for a kind of in IT teams as well. And I remember walking into there, and everyone's wearing this kind of very stereotypical IT team, where everyone's wearing kind of t-shirts and jeans, and maybe some t-shirts with like cartoons on and that type of thing. And immediately, from my kind of very strict upbringing about kind of uniform and dressing, I walked in with a shirt and tie and that type of thing. I looked around, everyone's in Sesame Street t-shirts and stuff like that, looking at me going, who's this guy? My immediate bias was, well, who are these guys? I don't really respect these guys because they're wearing them. But actually, their talent and their skill sets far outweighed almost their need to wear a uniform, because they surpassed the need to wear to code themselves.
Created, isn't that the culture?
But it's almost like they thought, I've got such an important skill here, and they were, because they're an isolated team. They were the kind of security guys in the IT team, and they basically thought maybe our skill set far surpasses the need to do that. Because I remember one guy just sat there like in a football shirt one day. And immediately I thought, well, I can never wear a football shirt to work, because I've got that whole bias of what a football shirt means. And wearing a football shirt means kind of the football match, not the going to the workplace. However, he was a manager. He was a very competent manager. He had his team around him, but he's there in a football shirt nonetheless.
But that's where you've earned the right to create that culture. Again, it comes to those schools possibly have worked hard to create that culture where it's the same as the formal name. Using the name. Do you drop the sir? Do you drop the miss? Do you refer to your first name? And
would you sit there in your class with a football shirt on to teach a class?
No.
But you've gained that authority already. People know you in that community. They know you're a teacher. You've built
question is, could I?
Yeah.
But because I have had to do my time, I've had to earn my stripes, I've had to gain that respect, I've had to build those relationships, I've had to have that buy-in. I mean, we all know there are some eccentric teachers out there, and you think of dress code, you think, yourself that we've always had those eccentric teachers, and that was part of their identity, and it was part of their kind of almost became part of their thing. We had one who we used to call him SAS because he wore socks and sandals. And that was it, and that became the thing. It was kind of like, and now somebody else tried to carry that off. That would just be not a chance. But he was so established that the kids just bought into it, and he was absolutely no one was ever going to tell him to say, look, socks and sandals, and that became the unofficial name was SAS, socks and sandals.
I mean, the history of uniform seems to suggest that it's coming from England. It's coming from kind of England, maybe British.
Industrial Revolution.
I presume for the Empire. There has been evidence of uniform in 1552 at Christ Hospital. There was also evidence of uniform in 1222, where the Archbishop of Canterbury ordered the wearing of uniform and an outfit. If you look at the map of where uniform is in the world, it is stark really that a lot of Europe doesn't wear uniform, and the North Americas doesn't wear uniform kind of as a whole. Does that map kind of look a bit kind of like the British Empire, or
it's like the Western world a little bit? It's almost like Western world, with the exception of the Western world that wasn't influenced by the British Empire, really, when you look at that, because you've got New Zealand and Australian members of the Commonwealth, but you still have China's quite fit, China, Japan, so Asia's completely uniform.
But have we kind of exported our what is school to the ones that
if you looked at I used to love watching Neighbours back in the day, and you see their uniform, which again was very more colourful. I mean, I remember working at the Sydney Olympic Games, nudge nudge, in 2000, and I remember the children's uniforms for the kids in Australia. They had all their hats on. They were literally, they had like these little ants. I remember looking at thousands and thousands of children holding hands going through the Olympic Park. And what struck me was the vibrancy of their uniforms. Their uniforms are like little streams of blue, little streams of red, little streams of orange, purple, and all of them wore those hats with the thing coming down the back, to protect their thing. And every single one of them was uniformly wearing the same uniform.
Yeah. I mean, the word kind of gives it away.
Absolutely. So Australia is massively, New Zealand, those countries, again, members of the British Empire, but so is China, so is Japan, of course. Japan's, they're very conformist when it comes to uniform. The whole of Africa is conformist in uniform. And what's interesting is that a lot of the OECD, your traditional OECD countries, with the exception of those members of the former empire, with the exception of it seems, North America, there does seem to be a pattern there. And it would be, I think, faith and religion comes into it as well. Those parts of the world tend to be more.
Design uniform kind of is largely now almost like a suit, isn't it? Essentially, so certainly for boys. So does it mirror kind of what is going on in the wider society, that our world has become very kind of corporate, very kind of privatized, therefore the uniform that children are wearing represents that more.
But hybrid working, I read a good article about this and listened to a bit of stuff on this about the death of the tie, the death of formal business wear. That, it's not even now politicians, you see, they take the tie off, or as I like to call it, the man shackle, which is, I hate wearing a tie. I don't mind wearing a shirt. I don't mind wearing a blazer. I don't mind looking smart. But I've always just hated a tie, and I've got a really good collection of ties. I've kind of thought to myself, I'll have to own a ties, which happens to be, what I do is, I take a tie in, I put the tie on in the morning, I take it off when the school finishes, and unbutton my top button. I'm still in my suit, but I unbutton my top button, and that's how I operate. And I put it up in one of the hooks in the staff room. And by the end of the term, I literally have 25 to 30 ties. Now, what happens is one of my colleagues comes in and forgets their tie. I sometimes see my ties walking around school. I had one of the midday supervisors whose son, this is classic, whose son was going for a job interview, turn around and goes, I'm just borrowing your purple tie. So I'm lending my ties out to the wider school community. Because, and joke was, it's like, does Bradley not have a tie? No, Brad doesn't have a tie. I think, why? Because, of course, young people now wouldn't, apart from school. And one classic example of this is, watch this one. We, for years, we used to get our kids to do their top buttons up. So it was one of those things, we had to go down the corridor, signing a diary, going, this child's got the top button. And what we're doing was just spending ages going down the corridor, going, signing a diary, going, top button, top button, top button. So one of my colleagues gets so fed up with this, what they go and do? Clip-on ties.
Yeah, clip-on ties is the big thing now, isn't it?
Clip-on ties. And you're like, now, problem solved. But lament this. I have traditionals going like, I've had, children when it comes to their formal, when it comes to their dinner dance, come to me and say, I've got this tie. And they don't know how to actually make their tie. So there I am with a 16-year-old, man mountain a foot taller than me, because I'm not exactly very tall. And I'm, putting this tie on like a father figure to a kid who's never put a tie on because we have clip-on ties.
But is that not when it becomes almost satirical, a tie? When you have to put it as a clip-on tie or a glue-on tie or a Velcro tie? Or,
exactly. Yeah. But then the other problem is that the kids would make, what they do is they'd make the tie fat, make the tie thin. Yeah. So you had to have 5 stripes on the tie. Yeah. So you'd be walking in the corridor going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes, and your top button's done. Brilliant. You turn your back, tie'd be pulled, top button be undone, and you're fighting a war of attrition.
But is that not also part of being a child? I mean, each school's got its own thing about that the cool group do something different with a tie, or they pull out some stitches. That means you're in a certain group. Or
my 4-year-old has a habit now. 4-year-old. I don't know if she's part of some gang of 4-year-olds, secret crew. Every time I come to pick her up from Wrap Round Club, she has her left leg up to her knee. Yeah. And I don't know why. I don't have an idea. I keep asking the Wrap Round people, why does she have that leg uncovered? And I think it started when she cut her knee once and wanted to show me. So now every time I come to pick her up, it's kind of like, is she secretly running the school? Is she part of a crew of kids, of the left knee kids, who've got their left leg rolled up? Is it like a west side and east side of your area? For my 4-year-old. But here's the thing, is that cardigans, right? I had a situation about 10 years ago where I had a class, and they were my tutor group, and the thing about it was they went through the year 9 phase, and I love these kids dearly. I'm still in contact with a lot of them. Some of them are now in their 30s. Some of them are even teachers, which is hilarious. And so year 9 came in, and makeup started going on, and I'm like, oh gosh. And of course, back then it was kind of like looking like Chi Chi the panda from Beijing Zoo with these black eyes looking at you, with the makeup and check on you, and the spiders for, what do you call them? The spiders
stick on eyebrows.
The stick on eyebrows that made
not eyebrows, eyelashes.
Eyelashes that look like spiders.
You can tell me and Brent on, but I've got. I'm going to have teenage daughters. Very
I'm not looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah.
So there we were with that, and I'm having to do my job, going, all right, come on, let's take the foundation down. Come on, let's get these eyelashes done, and it got pretty heated. So what they started was a bit of a rebellion, and this is the point you're making. Kids will always rebel against school uniform.
Yeah.
They'll always put their own identity twist on it. They'll always do something about it. They'll always come up with a way to kind of rebel against, and that's part of I think the rite of passage. But these girls are very cleverly. I'm so proud of them. If they're ever going to listen to this, they might know how proud I really was of them. So they circumvented the school rules in true Poland fashion, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not always a stickler for the rules myself sometimes, in an institutional society point of view. But here they did was they found out a niche a little tiny gap in our school uniform policy, which didn't state that you couldn't wear a cardigan. So they started coming in with cardigans, any colour cardigan. And of course they read the school rules, and they noticed there was a gap. And the gap was there saying no cardigan. There was no cardigan, so therefore they could wear a cardigan. Still, the whole year group started wearing cardigans. The whole school started wearing cardigans. We're going, where's these cardigans come from? Well, there's no rule against it. Boom. So we changed the rules to having a grey cardigan, not a branded one, a grey cardigan or a black cardigan, to allow sort of some sort of set standard. As soon as that grey and black cardigan was brought in, guess what?
It changed.
No, nobody. Nobody wore it. Now it's still a part of our school policy. It's still in there. But since after that, that's 12 years ago now, 13 years ago, and since then, no other child. And that's exactly what you get. Sometimes we get pushback, and you get kind of the constant, evolving, and the constant thing. And you see a lot of that sometimes with children rebelling. Paul, as he's saying, our regular contributor here, I still get a signed shirt and tie from his last day at school. Didn't have a uniform in primary days in the 80s. Oh, I love the 80s. We did have a primary uniform.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Is primary school uniform almost like preparation for the secondary uniform? Because if it's not, like my children's primary school didn't have a blazer. Now all the secondary schools around here have a blazer that needs to be worn, and that's been the big discomfort.
I noticed a lot of the new trusts, one of the first things they do, we hit up, didn't we, about they redesign the uniform, they come up with a new crest and they rebrand. It's almost like you said about marketing. And they've come a cropper actually with the new legislation. I think the new legislation states, let me just actually give you the wording of the new legislation on uniforms: cost of living crisis as it's being. But the Education and Guidance about Costs of School Uniforms Act 2021. Let's get that one again. Education and Guidance about Cost of School Uniforms Act 2021. In April 21, a new law was passed which required statutory guidance to be published on how schools should design and implement their uniform policies, with particular regard to the cost of uniform. It's almost as if they could predict the cost of living crisis 2 years before the cost of living crisis. The new law would help break down the barriers facing children living in low-income families. Timing is apt. The statutory guidance was published in November 21 and advises, in order to keep the cost of uniforms down, for branded items to be kept to a minimum, and for high street items to be allowed. So that's allowing your budget high street items, your grey shirts, exactly that grey uniform, unbranded, unlogoed. But how many times do you see a local newspaper with a parent saying, this uniform cost me £150, it has to be bought from a specific supplier, and it's because it's branded, because the new trust has brought in this branded uniform. And as a parent of 2 children at school myself, I can tell you, schools are a money box with a hole in them at the moment, with the amount of things you have to do, the wraparound clubs, sports clubs, everything. It's, schools are, difficult for parents to support. And uniform is a very hefty thing, especially school shoes. Children's shoes, the cost of children's shoes is an absolute... Breathe. My child's shoes can cost 3 times more than mine. And they are a quarter the size. Go figure. That's my rant on that one. What else? It also states that second-hand uniform must be available and providing cost-effective, sustainable options. Schools are expected to have taken steps to adhere to new guidance before parents buy uniform for academic year beginning September 22, which is now. And I know we have done this. I know myself and my school chaplain have set up some uniform drops for ex-pupils to drop their blazers, their ties, and their old uniform to help others who are struggling. So I know that's going to help. That really will help about uniform and guidance. But as we were stating when we saw that, your first response was, but that's the thing that all these new trusts went and did.
Yeah, immediately the thing is, and because they've put their, because I know my daughter's school, because the skirt has got the logo on it, the school logo on it, they can't really buy anything else, and it's one shop in the local area that sells it. So there's that kind of monopoly on price. According to the a report recently done, and I just posted it on Twitter from the Children's Society. You're looking at, on average, £337 per school child at secondary for the whole kit, because it's not just the PE kit, and there's other things that kind of go with it.
Sometimes it could be a coat that can be branded this. Yeah. Sometimes it could be the scarf. Sometimes it could be the coat, the scarf, the as we say, the jumper, the blazer, the shirt, the skirt.
Well, we had to buy a skirt for this is for the just PE. It was the PE skirt, the PE top. There was then like a PE kind of jacket that went over the top of that. That all of that was branded. So that all had to be brought from a particular shop. And my understanding is there's only one for us to buy it from. So therefore they had a complete monopoly on price, which goes against any kind of liberal economic kind of policy that you'd have thought, particularly this government, would be interested in, because they generally kind of favour competition, liberal kind of economic policy. So when it comes to schools, we're particularly trapped with just monopolies in a lot of areas where parents can only buy from one particular shop or one particular store.
And then the problem I've also seen, again, makes the local press, is some parent who turns around and doesn't buy into the branded stuff, and they go to their local supermarket and they buy the stuff from your local supermarket, which, to be fair, some teachers buy their stuff in the local supermarket. Why am I going to go spend £300 in a suit when I can get one for a fraction of the price?
Yeah.
Same issue, same deal. Actually, it is the same deal and same issue, isn't it? When you actually think about that, again, you want to look smart, but your clothes are very high impact. You actually think, I used to buy nice suits back in the day before I had children. Before I reached a certain milestone on my birthday and realised that a suit was also an awkward size for me. But I used to always end up with about 16 jackets and no trousers. That was the odd thing. I always ended up burning through the trousers like absolute hot knife through butter, and then having mismatched jackets. And that was one of the mistakes I made as a young teacher of buying, a nice pinstripe, nice little grey pinstripe, and then you don't get, So what I started to do is to buy 2 or even 3 pairs of trousers, knowing I will wear through those trousers, because we are high impact. We're constantly walking around. We're constantly, and you break duty. You actually, a school uniform needs to be that's the other thing, robust. And kids are uber destructive. The other thing kids do, they lose so much. The lost and found. Lost and found is just like a treasure trove. Yeah. And you go into the lost and found, there's like pair of trainers here, you think of 70, 80 quid. They don't always look after their uniform kids. And I do feel so sorry sometimes when you get a child going and the parent turns around and goes, the child's wearing trainers today and then you realise that because the kid's been out kicking football and then destroyed their shoes kicking football. And you're like, well, you want the child to go out and kick football and burn off some energy. But you get this flabbergasted parent turning around, that's the third pair of shoes they've gone through, the second pair of trousers. And economically speaking, that some of these people aren't in situations to keep buying uniforms. And you're right, they have to go to a certain stockist. And they put a markup. And in this crisis that we have at the moment, I think that's a good piece of legislation to bring to try and make uniform more accessible for people of all backgrounds. I think it's common sense, to be honest.
I think we've had this conversation before. I think I've told this story before in this show, but we had if we forgot our PE kit, there was like a black bin in the corner of the changing rooms. You could smell it from where you were getting changed, and it was always, "Oh, sir, I forgot my shorts." No problems. you you go straight into the black bin and pull out whatever. And obviously our school was kind of heavily into rugby, so you can imagine. Then you've got ill-fitting rugby shorts on.
I'm going to show you something.
Yep.
These.
So I'm looking at Brent's trainers. Yep.
Yeah. Guess what? 5-side game of football after school. Forgot my shoes.
Yep.
PE department turned around and they've been there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What are they?
Perfect pair of trainers. Yeah. I mean, we're often surprised. I mean, about the amount of stuff that is left in schools, clothes wise. I mean, my daughter on the second day managed to leave her trainers at the bus stop.
Cardigans.
Yeah.
My daughters go through cardigans like nothing else, and they bite them.
Yeah,
and
chewing the cardigan. Yeah. My daughter did that. It's obviously a nervous thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and they put their fingers through, so they've got almost like the cardigan becomes a glove. And then my wife looks at my daughter and you've only had that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now she's stitching away. So,
but it's interesting because my wife said straight away because I couldn't understand it, and my wife said straight away, "Oh, that's what I did." So it's almost like a generational thing with uniforms. So
funny, I used to chew a pen. I was more. It's funny that when you see some of the things again, you've got to empathise.
Yeah.
And you've got to put yourself into the shoes of the people you're educating. And again, I reflected back on when I was at school. Our uniform, we were allowed a jumper, a grey jumper, black trousers, white or grey shirt, and then a purple and grey tie, and we were quite lucky because the grammar school boys all were dressed they were dressed like penguins in black and with a yellow and black tie. They looked really smart. We secondary school kids didn't look as smart, but I think I was the only kid in my class that wore a white shirt, and I don't know why, but I wore a white shirt. And now thinking back, it's probably been a bit of a me back then of well, everybody else is wearing a grey, I'm gonna wear a white shirt. So it was my little rebellion. I'm the guy in class who's wearing a white shirt with the grey jumper. And then, what did I do? I used to tuck in. Oh, no, in the 90s, 80s, 90s. I used to tuck my shirt in. And I used to have one of those belts, one of those belts that used to have the steel buckle at the end.
Yeah.
And it was proper cowboy. And the shirt would be tucked in, the jumper would be tucked in. It's like Simon Cowell, younger version.
Right up.
Oh, no. But you know what I mean? That's so I was as a kid. I did exactly the same. We put our twist on the uniform.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, pull it. Tuck your shirt. Take your jumper out of here. And I'd be like, as soon as the teacher would go away, I'd be the same. So Paul's put it up. This says, after COVID, I wore my favourite suit, not bought for teaching, to school, and soon realised that the school suits should give a little, especially in primary. Yeah, comfort needs to be there. No, as he bent down, picked up the morning task, which is split completely front to back, and carrying the car keys, promptly rushed home to change.
Ooh.
I have had a full trouser split.
A full front and back. I've heard of a back split.
Yeah,
I've never heard of a full front and back.
I got so annoyed with boys nicking each other's footballs, and they kept kicking footballs over to the field next to which isn't, for not a better word, is a good place to have a geography field trip for a bog. And it's the place where footballs went to die. So of course, me get so fed up, and I went, right, I'm going next door, and I went into the bog in my uniform, my school shirt, and I ended up climbing up a tree. Oh my God! So
let's get the picture. So you're now up a tree.
Yep.
In full work clobber.
Yep.
And then
chucking the footballs down, and as I come down, I slid down the tree.
My!
And nearly did the splits, and the trousers ended up. The best part of it, my colleague who's from Australia, fun enough, he's about 7 foot taller than me, so I ended up borrowing his trousers. Do you ever see the scene from Big? Do you know when Tom Hanks is at the very end of Big, and he's walking down the street, and everything's out of kilter. He's literally like, that was me with those trousers for the rest of the day. And of course, the kids were in hysterics, going like, Poland went next door again. There's like 12 footballs came back, so I was a hero. But in the meantime, I mean, the caretaker knew exactly. He's like, you nearly injured yourself doing that. I'm like, I'm fine. He says, but the kids didn't see it. No, the kids didn't see it. He saw it. So health and safety, I was in a bit of trouble there. Would I do it again? I'd probably get on and then do it differently. But that was the thing. It literally front to back, and it was so embarrassing. Again, you know yourself. that's the thing with kids. Kids forgive you when you have a bit of eccentricity. So I have split my own trousers myself. I have gone to school with my jumper backwards, gone to school with my jumper inside out. We've all had uniform malfunctions. We've all watched.
But I think for men it's the trouser split is the worst.
The trouser split's the worst, or the sock that somehow got up, the sock that you somehow that tucked in that you forgot from the previous day, that's somehow still in the very bottom of your suit as you walk by and some sock falls out. We've all been there. We've all had that situation of kind of embarrassment, and so do the kids as well. I mean, by the time you get a kid coming in and it's like some kid looks like the mud monster of the thing, the swamp beast, because they're out playing football in God knows what weather, and they come in just completely caked in mud. And that's the thing. The uniforms need to be robust. Do I believe in them? I think they are important. I use them very much like I use the sort of slant technique at the start of a lesson. I always say, tuck your shirt in. Kids, we wear blazers. And the kids will always, I'm such a behaviourist, I'm such a BF Skinner. The kids will always turn around, one child will raise their hand and go, sir, and I'll go, yes, you can take your blazer off. So they ask my permission to take their blazer off. I'm never saying no.
Is that just part of the formality of what needs to happen?
It's part of the routine that starts the lesson to say, you're in lesson now, your uniform is at my discretion, provided you ask me in the right way, I will of course allow you to take the uniform off. And the same goes with a hot day. We'll make the judgment on a hot day to take the ties off. And we did this about 10 years, again, because I taught in a really warm classroom. I was a governor at the time. I says, we need a summer uniform. We need a summer uniform where the kids can wear the polo shirt. Because our classrooms, we saw that this year, didn't we? 40 degrees.
40, but even inside, this is what I don't think people really recognise in schools, is the temperature outside was thus, and the temperature inside then was kind of, as school classrooms are, particularly post lunchtime, the heat really seems to generate, doesn't it? If you've got an active class who's been out on the field, running around in circles for half an hour, and then they don't give them a chance they literally run into class, they hit your room, and then bang, the radiation from them.
Kids of mine got an award for a classroom I used to teach in that was bricked either side. It was a top floor, bricked either side, two windows that opened about 2 inches. And the heat retention in it was great. They came in and did the specific heat capacity of it. They won actually an award for redesigning the classroom because it was such a heat trap. And literally it was insulated, the whole lot. It was just, everything about that classroom was just a heat trap. And of course, me teaching humanities, I had 30 kids. What they found out was when they put 30 kids in the class, that the temperature was 3 degrees warmer than it was at the start. So by the end of the day, that's 3 on top of 3 on top of 3. And even some of the winter's days, I had to switch the radiators off permanently, because with the hot radiators going, they're actually sometimes worse in the winter than it was in the summer. So I'd be turning around to the kids and saying, could you, undo your top button, even take your tie off. Now, I had a senior manager years ago who was quite a stickler for uniform, walks into my lesson once. The kids had their ties off. I had my tie off. And they turned around and they said these words, Mr. Poland, where's your tie? And Mr. Poland was hot and flustered. Mr. Poland was not about to have any of this whatsoever. Mr. Poland was probably dehydrated. Mr. Poland was probably close to having his head explode with the amount of heat coming out of the classroom. So Mr. Poland replied to the senior member of staff, where's yours? It's not fair that you're wearing a dress and I'm wearing a suit. I had to take that deep in breath. Oh no, I've got to fight here, haven't I? And head teacher and I had a casual conversation about it and said, I don't appreciate it. The response I got was, well, a tie is male attire. So from that moment onwards, that's where I give the tie the nickname, the man shackle. And since then, I've constantly said, I'm sorry, but why am I wearing a tie when half the staff aren't? And I don't think it's fair sometimes that you see some members of staff who are wearing professional dress and others are thinking, oh, come on, be a teacher, look like a teacher, what are you doing? And I'm not, as a union guy, I would absolutely defend the rights of a member of staff who feels as if their identity is being curtailed because they have to wear a certain professional dress code. I've had those conversations where I've defended members of staff. But there's a certain line, isn't there? And there's a certain etiquette. And sometimes people can get really wrapped up in the uniform. You have to have a little bit of flexibility about uniform. That's what I'm saying. You have to have a little bit of nuisance. You see countries like Australia, they have a completely different summer uniform because they get that. You need kids to be comfortable.
Yeah.
It's like the water thing, isn't it? We used to have, you think back in our day, we used to never drink water in classrooms. Now I think we go too far, and our kids practically can't be 5 minutes without, they must be thinking they're going to the desert for a couple of months. Because sometimes kids are playing with water bottles, but I think it's good that they are hydrated. I think sometimes they go too far with it. But do you think that's a positive thing that's been made? Now we allow water bottles in class as long as they don't interfere with the learning, and the kids can casually take a drink of water, problem solved. But again, in our generation, that wasn't the case. In our generation, it was, you never drank water in the class.
We've had this conversation. I don't think I drank water on its own at all until I was an adult, because we usually always had squash or that type of thing. But my story is similar to what you said about the criticism of uniform. We were in Saturday morning announcements one morning. Senior leadership stands up and says, just a note to say, on school trips, jeans, and I will do the quotations here, are rarely appropriate. She said to the rest of the staff. And then my colleague sat next to me. He goes, I went on a school trip yesterday. I think she talked about me. So he went up to her and said, you talk about me, because everyone was wearing jeans, including the RE teacher that was with me. And her response was, but what you got to realise is that some people look better in jeans than others.
No.
It was just unbelievable. He kind of like cowered away going, do I look bad in jeans? I was like, well, to be fair, you don't look as good as him. Yeah, but it can be a real thing, especially on trips then, of what is appropriate, because it goes back
clarity's important, isn't it? Where clarity needs to be, and it's the same with uniform policy. It's very important, same with staff. If you have a uniform policy, that you stick to it. It's like everything else about consistency. Yeah. I sometimes get frustrated that Mr. Stickler for the rules, me, tuck your shirt in, and I'm walking down the corridor, tuck your shirt in, and then wonder, why am I the only guy talking about shirt tucked in? I think, that's because I'm the guy here 19 years and knows how important uniform is. And that's again one of those things that's gone by the wayside when it comes to COVID and standards. And I think it is obvious. It is one of the reasons why your new headship, when they come in, they attack uniform. Because I do believe that if you have a good uniform policy, a consistent uniform policy, it does help set that culture, set that tone. It puts that mark. It sets your standards, and I do firmly believe that how the appearance of the child, it's again that mantra of the child looks like a school child, acts like a school child, talks like a school child, learns like a school child. Boom. I look like a teacher, act like a teacher, talk like a teacher. Boom. We all know our roles. We know the lanes we're in, and we know exactly what's expected of us. The same goes for staff as goes for pupils. Some don't like that because they might see that restrictive, but I see that not as restrictive. I see that as consistent. I see that as normal. It's when you start to make rules for one and rules for another. It's when you start to say you can wear this and you can't wear that. Then you're in a hiding to nowhere, because then it's kind of like, well, that, and you know yourself, the biggest offence the kids have, somebody's talking, sir, why are you picking on me? Why are you having to go at me? And that is always, when I've been fighting the school uniform, it's always because one or two people have tested the water. They've got away with it. And it's a bit like appeasement makes the aggressor stronger. The more you let that go, then sometimes what happens is some schools and the staff just give up and say, what's good uniform?
Yeah.
It's like watching Waterloo Road or watching those TV shows. I can't watch them sometimes because I'm kind of like, what are you doing? What is the uniform policy in this fictitious school? I can't watch this program any longer. Yeah. So, because I think my life's going, you can't watch any of these programs with being like, but just stop. It's not a real program.
Yeah.
I watch Educating Yorkshire. Why am I watching Educating Yorkshire? I'm going, they're great guys. But I couldn't always watch it sometimes because I'm going like, you're standing in front of the head teacher. The head teacher's got a top button undone. The kids have got their top button undone. What is going on here? But that's not fair, I suppose, for me to criticise them, because in their context, maybe that was what they were dealing with, and I feel a bit guilty now, being a bit judgy about it. But that's how I feel about it. I feel a strong uniform policy is really important for setting the tone, creating the culture, and being consistent and being equal. Because if the uniform is applied equally to everybody, then it's applied equally to everybody, and the uniform is a good thing. I believe it's a good thing. But others, well, I suppose that's for people to decide whether they think it is or not.
Yeah. Well, should we have a break for the news, and then, because we've got lots to talk about, and we've done nearly 50 minutes there, where we want to. We did say that we kind of do a 20-minute kind of intro, but you can see how kind of complex the argument is, and we've still got loads to talk about. So Let's play today's news and this week's news, and then we'll come back afterwards and we'll continue the debate. Please follow us on Twitter or talk to us on the show. As it's our last show, we've not had one yet. It'd be great to have an actual live caller. So if anyone's there that would like to call in, that'd be great as well. I'd love to have this interaction. We just want to see if the kit works. Really, we've never pressed the button. We want to press the button. So please call in. Let's hear your voices. Let's hear what you got to say.
Tell us your funny uniform story.
Yes, funny uniform stories would be great. Have you had a full up the tree rip like Brent did?
Or as Paul has had the full bend over boot rip.
Right, cool. Right, we'll see you in a few minutes after today's news.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit johncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC has relaunched the 500 Words Writing Competition. The competition was first launched on Radio 2 in 2011 by its then breakfast show presenter Chris Evans. The UK-wide contest continued until 2020 with Evans' successor Zoe Ball. It will return in September and will again be backed by Queen Consort Camilla. It'll also be supported by Sir Lenny Henry. The announcement was made on Thursday the 1st of March, World Book Day, on BBC One's Breakfast News programme. BBC Breakfast presenter John Kay said, "We are delighted to be championing 500 Words and look forward to stellar entries from talented, aspiring young writers." Up until 2020, the competition had received more than 1 million stories, all written by children and adding up to more than 440 million words. Judges on this year's panel will include teachers and librarians, as well as best-selling authors, which will include former Children's Laureate Mallory Blackman and Charlie Higson, author of 5 of the Young Bond novels. The grand final will feature 50 of the best entries from 2 different age categories, and it will take place on World Book Day 2024. WhatsApp messages sent by government ministers and civil servants during the height of the pandemic have been causing a stir in many circles since The Telegraph published its series of stories giving insight into a usually private world. Several teaching unions hit out at what was described as contemptible comments made in the WhatsApps by former Education Secretary Sir Gavin Williamson. In the messages, Williamson appeared to suggest that staff were looking for an excuse not to work during the pandemic. There were also comments made by former Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who referred to teaching unions as a bunch of absolute arses. Sir Gavin was seen to reply, "They really do just hate work." In a perhaps ill-advised series of tweets this week, Sir Gavin Williamson attempted first an apology, saying the comments were aimed at some unions and that he had the utmost respect for teachers. But many of those replying pointed out that unions are made up of teachers and that cannot be separated. They and union leaders went on to point out that teachers worked throughout the pandemic. National Education Union Joint General Secretary Mary Bousted went on to say that she hoped that the present Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, did not share the contemptuous attitude whilst the current pay dispute continues. Whilst the pay disputes continue in England, they are possibly just getting started in the Channel Island of Guernsey. NASUWT leaders on the island say that local members have voted overwhelmingly in favour of industrial action over pay and workload. According to a report in Guernsey Press, strike action was backed by 9 out of 10 voters who took part in the ballot. 57% of members voted. Teachers in Guernsey have been offered a 3-year deal with a 5% increase in 2022, a 7% increase in 2023, and an increase of 1% below inflation in 2024. Meanwhile, in Scotland, the EIS union has suspended all planned strike action after a new pay deal was offered. The 12.3% increase on the current pay rate has been welcomed by EIS leaders, who was said to be recommending its members accept the offer. The union will ballot its members on the deal, which would see teacher pay rise by £5,200 in April. Scotland's Education Secretary has welcomed the suspensions of strike action, but the NESUWT's General Secretary, Dr Patrick Roach, said the offer was paltry, and whilst it would ballot members, its campaign of strike action and action short of strikes would continue. Finally, while strike action causes disruption in schools, the Eastern Daily Press reports that some families have opted for family days out to local tourist attractions. Many of the attractions have created special offers and promotions to make the most of possible extra visitors on planned strike days. Banham Zoo and Africa Alive offered free entry for up to 3 children per paying adult. A spokesperson for the attraction said they hope to provide an educational experience for children to learn about the planet and the environment. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week we're going to talk about tech for well-being. We all have tech all around us, but what do you do to strike a work-life balance when technology makes you available 24/7? During the pandemic, parents having the ability to directly message or email teachers increased, and for good reason. The issue now is some schools have continued to maintain this communication. Here are a couple of ideas to let tech make your communication a little easier. First, you need to read your school's policy on replying to messages. This will outline what you're expected to do. A lot of systems have an auto response or an out-of-office reply. When you're taking a break, switching this on can send an automated message to let people know you will respond in a timely manner. Here is where you could quote the school's policy. Do not disturb is another setting you could use to stop devices notifying you between set times that you decide. You can also set this so certain people, like family and friends, can still alert you. Delayed response is a setting in a lot of email applications. If you want to create emails at unsociable times, you can set them to send at specific times, allowing you to work when you like, but not go against any timing set out in school policy. Why not tell us what you do with tech for your well-being at TT Radio Official? I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome back there, and did I ever tell you what the my tutees did to me in retaliation for year 9 with the uniform?
No.
I used to have long, flowing hair that was quite way down my back. It was,
Okay.
was my main.
You had a bit of a trim today, haven't you?
Had a bit of a trim today, but I did have it. It became my signature thing. I did have nice, really. And so what they said was, they came to me and says, "Look, sir, I'm going to shave your head." I says, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Going to tidy you up." I says, "What do you mean? You're going to cut your hair?" So they came to me and says, "Well, there's a charity." And the charity actually they chose was the Holocaust charity, I think, the Aegis Trust.
Yeah.
Which is based in Newark, which is based in the Holocaust Memorial Centre. So they knew they'd picked a good historical thing for me. And so the kids had to come into the hall and I'd pay, I think it was 50p or a pound or something, what it was, to watch me have my head shaved. So I said to the head teacher, says, "Look, they're going to shave my head no more than grade 3 or 4. So I'll do a full shave, but, I've got the clippers, the professional clippers." And there's a video of this. To this day, I can't figure out whether that guard fell off. Because when the guard fell off, it was like something from a movie, when they kind of... Yeah. And literally, that was it. There was a big, giant, scalped line that went straight up. And it was like, basically, it was straight up the middle. And they looked around, and I'll never forget, and one of the girls goes to me, "Sorry, the guards fell off. It's down to unguarded."
Yeah.
And I just go, "Right, take the whole lot off." They absolutely scalped
full
me.
scalping, yeah.
And I thought, you. And now one of the girls is actually now a teacher, and she came into teacher training in the school as well. The first thing she said, "Do you remember the time you scalped me? You scalped me?" And her response was, "Well, that's what you get for calling us out about our makeup when we were here now." And I thought it was absolute pay. But £650 towards charity, and I got a new haircut for a while. But I'll never forget the humbling experience. But that was about the relationships, and they knew, I cared about them, and it was because I cared about them. I challenged them on the uniform because I wanted them. I wanted them to look the part. I wanted them to be professional. I wanted them to be. I did make a mistake. I did push them in a certain direction, but it came from a good place. They understood that. One of the parents turned and said to me, "Goes, I love Mr. Paul in the bits. My daughter thinks the world of him, but he might have got it wrong on the uniform. He's dealing with teenage girls after all.
Yeah.
And now, as a parent, it's interesting, with a bit more maturity, I sort of realise, actually, probably he did more back than good. But I realised the mistake and then made up with it, and in the end it turned out okay. So I think with uniform, like everything else, it does take a little bit of compromise, doesn't it? It does take a bit of buy-in. It does take a little bit of the fact that the uniform needs to be appropriate. And I think when you see those news articles in the newspaper, maybe sometimes it is the school being unreasonable. Maybe sometimes it is the parent being unreasonable. Maybe sometimes it's the child being unreasonable, but all should work together to come up with something, I think. And it's because when they're out of kilter, when the parents making demands about school uniform, they don't buy into it. Maybe it's the kids that don't buy into it. Maybe because they haven't been explained the culture behind the uniform, the good thing about the uniform. Or maybe sometimes it's the teachers themselves. Oh, I'm sick of trying to get these kids to conform to uniform. So that was my take on that. Yes, Paul, it's the last Sunday lunch show that we're doing, but we are going to be doing Teacher Talk Radio during the week. And we are going to upload some podcasts and stuff as well. So it's the last of this slot.
I mean, it might be. We've not fully decided yet, but so we do want to maybe put something up as a conversational thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're right, this has worked. We were just talking earlier about how much we've enjoyed it as well.
Oh,
but just unfortunately, external pressures of our wives.
Yes, wives and children.
Wives and children on Sundays.
Yeah,
it's taking a bit of a hit, but we like. I think I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tom and for getting in contact with us and allowing us this opportunity to do this. The Teacher Talk Radio team is fantastic with the stuff that goes up in the week about helping us.
We're evolving.
That's nice in the week to have that kind of community as well. And there's still fantastic shows that people can do it. So we're kind of pausing the Sunday bit for we've both got young kids and we just need a bit of time on a Sunday just to get organised for the week because it's getting a bit chaotic.
But we'll be doing some Twitter Spaces during the week, some slots for people to ring in and more of that, and the podcasts as well. They'll be downloadable. So no, we're just changing the format slightly, but we're not going anywhere. We love what we're doing, and we obviously just want to evolve what we are doing as well. So that's my take on uniform. List a couple of news stories.
Yes, we just go through this week's news in a bit more detail.
On uniform. So these are the actual ones, and this is what prompted this, is that we have pupils humiliated by school skirt length inspections. Female pupils said they'd be left humiliated over enforcement of uniform policy at a Merseyside school. Girls were made to enter the high school in St Helens separately to boys and have their skirt length inspected by male teachers. They claim hundreds of people staged a protest and how the rules, which left them feel some pupils in tears, had been imposed. The school said the implementation of the uniform policy was carried out by staff, both male and female, with more than 1,000 people have signed a petition against the policy, calling it outdated and ridiculous. Now, I'm going to make a confession to you. About 10 years ago, we were given a small, tiny, little measured piece of wood, off which one of the instructions we were given, oh God, I don't know if I can actually say this, was to measure the length of the knee to the skirt at 15 inches. None of the male staff actually said, we're not doing that. So I actually, as the union rep, was like, no, come on, we're not doing that. Now, that seems completely ridiculous now, and it would never be proposed now. It's just, again, shows you how things have changed quickly. Our pastoral team has some of the female staff who take what we call the sort of like those issues sensitively, because we're well aware that it is a little bit different for the girls and the boys. And again, one of the things that we decided to do a while back was to bring trousers in. And I was in the governing body at the time, and there was some old school pushback of it's always been a skirt for the girls and trousers for the boys. What I did was I involved the student body, the head pupils, the school council, and they put together a really good package. What they also did was they surveyed the parents, they surveyed the pupils, and they surveyed the governors. And the groundswell of the school community was, we want to change a uniform. And it was very hard for the old diehards to ignore that, because what you got then was you got buy-in, and you got people saying, this is what we want the uniform to be changed. And much like everything else, as soon as we changed to trousers for boys and girls, there's only a few girls that wear trousers, but they still have the option to do it. Now, what I'd like to do next with that is I'd like to move to a situation where boys be able to wear shorts.
Yeah, I think my
especially in the summer.
My daughter's primary school they have a thing where, I don't know if it's kind of a historic thing about the boys trying to wear shorts as long as possible into the winter. And that's a kind of, it's like a thing that's been going on for years at their school, where there's a kind of historical thing of, and I don't know if it's some of the dads have said to the boys that when I was young, we had this game where we'd see how long we could wear shorts for. But some of the lads, they really are pushing it right into the middle of winter. They're still wearing shorts. But there's a practical element to uniform, isn't there? As well as, so it's whether the skirt is actually a practical thing for girls to wear during the school day, not only to hold their modesty, but also actually, is it something they can still be an active part? You think about maybe in a lesson where you want to do something a bit more active.
Yeah.
Is the school dress and your skirt itself, or the dress, a practical thing for them to actually be using, or would trousers and shorts be better generally?
But it's also awkward as well and it is awkward. You have to turn around to a member of staff and say to another member of staff, I don't feel comfortable telling that young girl that her skirt is a certain length. Yeah. And I'll avoid that conversation, but I'll subtly say to another member of staff, could you have that conversation, please? But equally, it's the same as staff members. I've had situations, again, as a union rep, where I've had to go to a staff member and say, look, I know they're so lovely shoes. I know you think they're fantastic, but please, they're not appropriate. And people need clarity. Is that clarity of, you have to turn around and have to have those awkward conversations. But again, it's a setup, isn't it? If you have a school uniform that can be corrupted that way and can be changed that way, then you need to change the school uniform. And I know that one of the schools where I grew up, what they did was they made the skirts what we used to call caravans. And they were like the skirts that went down to their ankles. It was such a Catholic school thing, unbelievable. And basically they made the skirts these big, giant, almost, I don't know how to describe them.
The things that you put on toilets, the toilet covers,
like curtains, basically.
Yeah.
They were like, you could make them probably into curtains because they wanted the girls to look prim and proper, and it was a very traditional school, and that's how they wore the skirts, of course. Because it is about expression, isn't it? And I get why some people, support their child expressing themselves. But it's when you see, the haircuts is another one as well. When you're like, the child goes to the barbers and they sneak away, and you get that sometimes about hair policy, about no tram lines, no colour, this, that, the other. And again, it's about that buy-in. If the parents turn around to their child and say to their child, they want this haircut, my child can have this haircut, and they disobey the school rules, you often get sometimes the parent knowingly disobeying the school rules on uniform and fighting the school, and you're thinking, you're going about this the wrong way. Yeah. No wonder your child, what are you teaching your child? Yeah. Okay, fine, I kick off, I go to the local press, and I'm going to say, I'm sick and tired of seeing in the local press somebody who's like, my child's been discriminated against, they went to the barbers, they got a haircut, what's wrong with this haircut? The school's being dragged. And you think, I'm sorry, come on, they're the school rules, you are no different, your child is no different, and if you think the world is going to, police officer, I can do 35 mile an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone. Who do you think you're talking to? And it really grinds my gears, that sometimes, because you're like, right, it's not the right way, it's not the best way to go about getting what you want.
Yeah, I guess
run away to the local press.
I guess there's always that thing, like using the example that you did there. It's like that example of kind of policy, which is an evolving thing, and kind of a legal framework, which we don't have in. Do we have a legal framework for uniform in schools?
What is interesting about it, especially for staff?
You should bring your keyboard.
I'm on one. So what's interesting about it is that there isn't for staff, so to speak. Many schools have dress codes, uniform policies, and rules in appearance. There's no legislation that deals specifically with school dress code or aspects of appearance. If your school has decided on a dress code, the document provides advice on how to develop your policy or review if you have one. So that's getting this from my union, who obviously have got guidance on it. It is for the governing body, trust management board, a governing body, a relevant responsible body of the school to decide whether they have your school dress code or policy and the content of that policy. So it's up to individual school to have a policy on their dress code, and it's up to their discretion what that policy is. Any decision made should be on the basis of a consultation with the school's leadership, pupils, parents, and carers. That's exactly what I'm saying. If somebody wants the new haircut policy, go to the school governing body, go to your head teacher, get the kids on board, get the governors on board, get the trust on board, win your argument that way. But this petulance that you get of like, I'm sick and tired of this school uniform policy. Fine. take a child to another school. They've got no school uniform. And so I get really enraged with this sometimes. We're like, you want to fight against us? Fine. Work within the system, work within the rules, change the rules if you want to change the rules, evolve your school policy, work within the school uniform policy, be reasonable. But this absolute, everybody has to get what they want analogy, it's just absolutely destroying schools.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting the support sometimes. And the majority of parents, the majority of kids are absolutely fine. As long as you're quite clear and you have clarity, and as long as you've got common sense policies, and as long as your school uniform doesn't cost half a mortgage, most people are okay with it.
So when it goes on to say that the policy should not contradict human rights and public sector equality duty,
yes,
could you give an example of how a uniform could contradict human rights? You think? I mean, how would that kind of
protected
clash?
Characteristics, and I think this is where we're going to have some sticky wickets in the next couple of years when it comes to protected characteristics. So, say for instance, it's a religious school, and you're saying to the boys, and we had this situation where at sixth form, I liked a goatee. Hello, goatee beard. So I was one of those kids that could grow a moustache at 14. You know what I mean? I was cool. You know what I mean? I had sideburns when I was 15.
Me too.
So you do that thing. You always get some of the boys, don't you, with their whiskers coming in, and they start expressing their identity, and they start. But my sixth form insisted that we were clean shaven. And around about the time I discovered I could grow facial hair, they wanted to remove my facial hair, which I was extremely but they actually insisted that we were clean shaven. Yeah. Now, there's nothing within my religion that says that I have to be clean shaven, but in some religions, obviously beards are part of, and in some religions, the hairstyle is part of. And we've seen that, of course, as well, haven't we, with part of some cultures about certain hairstyles and certain hair appearances. And you have to take into context of the setting of what you're teaching in, and you have to be, I think, a little bit flexible, but again, consistent. So if you turn around and say, if a person is from a certain cultural background, that's acceptable, and you have to be, tolerant to a certain extent. We are in a multicultural society. So the school uniform should not discriminate based upon any of the protected characteristics. And that also goes for staff, doesn't it? Yeah. And that goes for gender identity, sexuality, race, religion, all of that. And that can be tricky to finding. But again, it is about how you find that happy medium of making sure you protect those protected characteristics and allow a uniform that is flexible enough to allow for everybody to be able to express themselves, but having some sort of set standard and a clarity where you're saying everybody knows what the uniform policy is. And also that the community, the teachers, the governors, the trust, wherever it is, has that policy, and that it's an ever-changing living document. Because uniform policy should be changing all the time, depending on what's going on in our society. Climate change in our classrooms. Hello, some are uniform. So that's 40-degree classrooms. Never had that before. That needs us to have a rethink about what we're putting the children in. If your classrooms are going to be overheating, that does mean being a little bit flexible and having a little bit of a conversation about, is it appropriate to have children dressed in these clothes in this heat? No, it's not. So let's change the uniform to match accordingly. But there isn't. That's again one of those things you sort of think to yourself that needs probably clarity. And like they've done with the Education and Guidance and School Uniforms Act of 2021, maybe be moving towards a time when the government legislates for school uniform. As you see with all that map of those countries you're talking about, maybe they have, policies in some countries where the children have to wear a uniform. It's been mandated from the central government. But we're moving to a point now where education has all become devolved, doesn't it? The local trusts have the ability to raise their own. So as long as they're within certain legislation of human rights acts. But you get me, my kids, and I'm telling you, some of my kids know their rights. Yeah. They'll push the boundaries now. This is we see with these school strikes. So you take those school strikes when those children are saying, their human rights are being infringed upon. And they might have a point. You know what I mean? Saying that girls should wear, having... The sound of it doesn't sound good when you have male members of staff, and I'm not getting into that story whether that's true or not, but you have male members of staff telling young girls, what length to wear their skirts. The optics don't look good, but that's not fair on teachers to put. It's not fair to put the teachers in that situation in the first place to set them up like that, because we're sometimes just merely following the instructions of what the policy is. So. Yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it?
But one of the key factors that we looked at, and we've got 15 minutes, so we need to kind of just go through some of the key points. The school in Derbyshire, I mean, I nearly worked there a couple of years ago. I've got friends that work there. So Anthony Gell in Wirksworth in Derbyshire is kind of, I've just shared the article on the Guardian article on Twitter for people to look at as they read. But they start to pose this question about academic and school achievement and uniform, and is there a link within it? This is a case of it having no impact on it. However, Ofsted has said, it's largely coming from the Conservative Party quote here, is that the best performing schools tend to have similar, if not the same, best practices, including strict school uniform policies with blazer, tie, shirts, and a zero tolerance on incorrect or untidy dress. Now, there's a case, certainly quite close to us here, of a school that has, as far as I'm aware, never had any uniform. And I mean, if you look at the picture that comes with it, when we say no uniform, we mean wear what you want.
That's fascinating.
But it's Ofsted good. It has good outcomes. Good pathways for the pupils that leave.
Do they use the first names for the teachers? I wonder.
Don't believe so. I mean, it'd be interesting if we could.
Be interesting to see what else goes with uniform. If you take control conditions, is it just the uniform? Is it selective? Is it that the children is it the parents buy into it? By definition, the parents that send their children there have the cultural capital,
as I say, I mean, in Wirksworth itself as an area is a very
old mining area, the industrialised.
It has, but it's kind of evolved over the last 20 years as a very kind of arts-based kind of community. If you go for a walk through the village up over the kind of quarries, you'll see all sorts of artwork on display. They have a regular arts trail. It's got a big kind of arts community within it.
Discovered itself.
So it's really discovered itself out of that. There is still a lot of hidden poverty there, etc. So that's also there. It's also got a big agricultural world and haulage kind of community around it as well. So it's not just that the art community, I suppose the right wing would say this is the wokerati that's just completely engulfed this area. And,
this would be the opposite of your Burble Sims and places like that.
But it's not true. I mean, the area itself, Derby Dales, is very conservative, isn't it? I mean, always has been kind of socially and economically.
But traditional as well. You'd also say, socially conservative in that sense of, more rural tends to be more socially conservative, doesn't it? More urban tends to be more. So what we're really saying is you'd expect to find that in some urban inner city London school rather than some rural urban fringe of Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire. That's fascinating. But then that needs further investigation. That needs to be replicated across. But maybe is it because, like I was saying, maybe because there's an agreement from the parents, agreement from the pupils, agreement from that they behave themselves. Maybe one of the reasons why my non-uniform days are such terribly behaved is because when you have the children sort of uniform, and then you unleash the valve, then does that kind of become an issue? If they had non-uniform all the time, they'd find their natural gravitas. They'd find they're not. It becomes less of a problem.
Well, I think this is the thing, and one of my friends who works there now has said that actually he spends so little time talking about uniform, it enables him just to get on with the lesson. Which is my
clip-on tie situation, because I used to spend a lot of time with clip-on tie. Get your tie done up, bang, clip-on tie. Don't talk about that any longer. So same with the skirt length. In some schools, if they go trousers, they have no more problems with the skirt length. But let me just read you this one. This is interesting. Gender-neutral uniform sparks protest at a school. Police have been called to a school. Police have been called to a school after people staged a protest against a proposed gender-neutral uniform. In Oxfordshire, they wanted to make trousers compulsory for all students. And that's the thing. They wanted to make trousers compulsory for all students. It said it wanted to empower pupils, but admitted that it also came about because some girls were rolling up their skirts, that eternal issue, to make them shorter. Following this, the school apologised for not consulting properly with pupils and parents. That kind of backs up what I'm saying, doesn't it? In a statement issued after the protest, the school executive head teacher said they underestimated the strength of feeling on the issue. So there it goes. If you're going to change the uniform, you got to bring people with you. You got to talk to the kids. You got to talk to the governing body. You got to bring parents. You got to. That's that intrinsic buy-in again, isn't it?
But that's the thing. I don't think that secondary.
And that was well intended.
Yeah, yeah.
They were probably trying to do something well intended, but forgot to take people along with them.
Yeah, I mean, how many secondary schools do you know? Maybe this is a wider question generally. But how many secondary schools do you know that have an active parent voice? Like an actual active, not sending them a survey once a year,
honestly,
or when Ofsted come, but actually kind of they're in the school all the time, like primary schools are.
I think governing bodies have been very weakened as a result of academic trusts. I think, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to be as controversial as I could be on it, but academic trusts are less connected to the communities they serve sometimes, as opposed to when schools were under local authority and were more grounded in the local community. When your governing body used to have a lot more people in it. And I think maybe that's where you've lost that connection and lost that buy-in. And maybe that's what you're seeing with some of these parents, where they feel as if they're being dictated to, rather than talked to as equals, and maybe that's the strength of feeling that comes across some of these stories. It's kind of like they have no say in their child's education, they have no say in their child's appearance, they have no say in the policy. Whereas, like everything else, if you involve people in the policy, let them evolve the policy, you get buy-in.
Of course, yeah.
And when there's no fashion democracy thing about that, isn't it? That's democratization, isn't it? When people are involved and people are empowered, when people take part, when people feel it's theirs, people will buy into it. And then that's what your non-uniform school says, is you have to involve those people, because what are the parents having to do? Buy the uniform, get the kids to wear the uniform. They're fighting a fight too as well, aren't they?
But it's not just that, is that you don't want that issue when the child comes home and the parents saying, well, don't worry about that. It's really hard to get that collective buy-in if they weren't involved in the process.
No. But if they don't believe in it, subconsciously or even consciously, they pass that on to their children. Oh God, you wear that? Yeah, I hate that uniform. Yeah. Oh God, and maybe the schools that don't have the uniform problems is because they accept it. Oh, that's their uniform. I'm proud of that uniform. You look good in that uniform, and they believe in the uniform.
So it's actually as the uniform become the point of conflict because the parents feels dislocated from the school. Possibly. And actually this is the point that they're going to have that kind of argument.
And if you strip down some of those news stories, and you could go through the local news press, the Daily Bugle for the local community where you come from, and they'll guarantee there'll be a parent who's saying, my child's been excluded, they've had, and then the undercurrent of that will be, sometimes the child's got other complex needs. Sometimes there's more goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not always universal. Sometimes there is a story. There is a story behind it. But I often feel sorry for that parent, but I think, why have you gone to the press? And maybe they've gone to the press because you're right. Maybe they are frustrated. Maybe they do feel that they have to have no other course of action. But I do feel very sad that that's come to that, because you'd want that person to feel as if there is a mechanism in place that they can affect some change.
Yeah.
The Democrat in me feels strongly about that. That's one of the reasons why I spoke to my head boy and head girl back in the day and saying, you want a summer uniform? Go to the governing body. Go to the students, go to the teachers, go get the support for it, and then you'll be able to change that. Because you that's what you have to do, don't you? You have to work hard to make changes sometimes. But people think petulantly breaking the rules. That's the thing. People think that going against and breaking the rules and then having a mini rebellion tends to get conflict, doesn't it? It tends to create conflict. And then what happens then is that the lines are drawn and nobody budges, nobody compromises. So what we're proving here is that to change school uniform, that's the way to go about it, is to get involved. Here's an interesting one for you. School replaced girls' mirrors with motivational quotes. That's this week. So in Worcester, a school has been criticised by parents, after replacing mirrors in the girls' lavatories with motivational quotes, saying they should avoid wearing makeup because guys fall for natural beauty. Okay. The school put up the posters after concerns that the bathroom had become a congregational social area. Really? Have they ever been to a nightclub? Hello? The slogans included, beauty is nothing without brains. Dear girls, makeup is a harmful drug. This is kind of where I was all those years ago and had my head shaved. Once you start using it, you'll feel ugly without it. The head teacher said mirrors have been removed temporarily after a period of misuse, where the toilets have become a congregational social area with older students blocking the path to the toilets while they socialise and often late for lessons. However, the decision was criticised by parents, and one unnamed said the quotes are degrading. This is not the message we want to be sending our extremely impressionable girls as young as 11. I see both sides. Again, well-intentioned. I get the frustration. I know what they're trying to do, but have they gone about it in the right way? Would you put that out to parents and say, look, parents, what do you think? And what would they have got? Bailey?
Yeah. It's a very challenging one, isn't it? Because, children, again, I'm not a kind of anthropologist on this, but I presume that there has been young people have always, done something for their own looks and style over years anyway, haven't they? Whether is their argument that the makeup and the look of somebody is becoming like a toxic thing in itself within the school. I mean,
but that could be taken as a personal criticism. And again, I'm holding my hands up and saying I've outed myself as having made that mistake all those years ago and paid the price of having my head shaved for it. I'm contrite enough to know what you do and what you don't do. But that it was always going to backfire in this day and age. Again, well-intentioned and know what you're trying to do. You're trying to motivate young girls to be serious academics, but a way of going about that. I mean, if you've got a problem with that going on at toilets, then we're back to this issue about toilets.
Because I know for me, because during that period of like 13, 16, me and my brother had absolutely horrific acne during that period. And we kind of wanted, if there had been a product that could help us kind of conceal some of that up, we probably would have worn it now. So are you kind of simplifying an actual very deep thing about that age group and that notion about trying to fit in and not how they feel about themselves? Is it as obvious as just removing a mirror? I mean, you've got it on your phone, you've got it on reflection, you see yourself. I understand the point they're trying to make. Then it's kind of well-intentioned point of actually there's more to you than just your beauty.
But removing mirrors in a girl's bathroom, putting up motivational quotes that are deemed seemingly quite patronising in itself is kind. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything wrong, for example, of going to the bathroom and then just looking at yourself in the mirror quickly and just smarting yourself up before the next thing?
I mean, the hidden thing, what they're saying there is what a lot of schools are struggling with at the moment, is that schools and toilets issues, which we've talked about before, about one school getting to the point where they lock the toilets for safeguarding issues. And I think, again, that's back again to other issues connected to what's going on with behaviour in school, control of behaviour, post-COVID, what's going on with the routines, what's going on with the curriculum, what's going on with so many different things that the kids are wanting to leave lessons to hang around toilets. Kids have always wanted to go to the toilet and hang around in different places. It's eternal. I remember one of my friends used to get purposely sent out of lessons so he could go to the toilet to have a cigarette. Because that was the thing that used to be back in when I was in school, was kind of like getting purposely chucked out of lessons at a certain time in order to go. And that's what one of my best friends used to do. And I wasn't a smoker. Because you had smokers and non-smokers. I was too into sports to be a smoker. But that's what he used to do. He used to pick a certain teacher that he knew he'd get removed from, get him removed, and then go to the toilet and have a smoke. And then he'd come back and sit beside me, and I'd be like, mate, you're sponsored by, Benson and Hedges. And the teacher must have known, but that's what was happening. And that was back in the 80s, 90s. So there's always been this eternal issue about, toilets and kids going to the toilet and misbehaving and everything else. But to replace mirrors, and specifically, again, the girls, that's you're targeting a group of students and saying to these group of students, your appearance is a problem. You've gone about that. It could be, again, would that be considered a breach of human rights? Because under that law, you're targeting a group of people and saying there's something about them. And so I think we have to have a conversation about uniform and the purpose of uniform at a national level. And maybe that's what research needs to be done at school. We probably need to have a bigger conversation about a lot of things. This is another one of those things about school uniform buy-in. But I do believe we're right. We're onto something about the buy-in of parents and about the disconnect of parents to schools, and that's bound to relationships. Because the thing is, the parents of the students who I got it wrong with when I had to go with their uniform, they forgive me. Because they knew deep down I had their best interests at heart. And kids forgive me. Because they knew that I cared about it. But I worked hard in that relationship. And if schools don't have staff would have those relationships built up because there's retention problems, it's all connected, isn't it? You mean, if your school uniform policy is not something you completely buy in, but you still like the school, you might not be triggered by it as much. You might say, I'll let that go. But if you're angry about other things going on with the school, as you say, uniform becomes that thing that they can pick upon and go, see, this school is terrible because they've done this about you. And I think that's uniform is a bit of a stick to beat some schools up with at the moment, isn't it?
Anyway, let's try and finish our last show on time. So quickly, uniform, yes or no?
Always, yeah.
Okay, I think it's a yes for me as well, but I think I'd like to see a much more practical uniform that allows students to be a bit more active and comfortable during the lesson. I personally would go for a kind of polo shirt style, certainly for the younger years. Maybe you can increase it up to a kind of more formal wear as the pupils get older. And I think there's got to be a flexibility within uniform for people
negotiated by the community and the parents and the kids. Okay. I think we'll come to a kind of understanding of that. But I think the key thing is uniform has to be negotiated.
So that's a bigger issue. Maybe we can come back to that as a podcast in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You know, what is the relationship with the school and the community and why that is important.
Well, I think that underpins a lot of other issues going on. So, don't forget, this show has come to us in partnership with John Catt Education, who's a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you check out their releases? Some fantastic stuff in John Catt. Every time I do this, I keep checking stuff out and going, more books than I have time to read, but that's a good thing. And some cracking titles in there. We've got my favourite, The Sage on the Stage by Michael Schweigster, and that's Reflections on Teaching and Learning, because I think I'm a bit of a sage on the stage. Old school, chalk and talk, pedagogical, Socratic, and The Learning Rainforest, Teaching in Real Classrooms by Tom Sherrington looks really good as well, so that's on my list as well. So please check out their titles, some cracking CPD, and please don't miss out. We're also always on the hunt for new talent, new presenters, and new individuals to come and join the collective hive mind, which is Teachers Talk Radio.
Sunday.
Yes, you can come on this Sunday. But equally, we're always looking for presenters, we're looking for contributors, we're looking for people to chip in. It's one of the things about teaching we love is the interaction, the banter, and just the general sort of sharing of anecdotal stories is always good. So we are a very diverse bunch, and you'd be more than welcome to come and join us and present and have a go at it. You might like it like we do. Sunday's a busy day for Teacher Talk Radio. There was a weekly review show that was myself, Lucy, John, and Leanne this morning, and we were talking about Gavin and Mark Hancock's texts. We're talking about the International Baccalaureate and chatbot. We're also talking about the sacking of a head teacher as a result of breach of data because of what happened during the strike. So you can listen to that. And also, if you get a chance to listen back to the NEDU Showdown, which was Tom's Friday night 1.5 hour hosting session, which was basically Teachers Talk Radio's version of Jeremy Paxman. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and fairly done as well, and very professionally done. So if you're still struggling with who to vote for in the upcoming NEU elections, that might help you decide. And equally, if you are interested to see who could be potentially leading the largest teaching union, then you can have a listen into that. That way you get all of our shows, including that and today's show, on where you get your podcasts from. So this is our final Sunday. I'm going to watch the football later on. And
I don't know what we're doing this afternoon. I might marking, just do a bit of prep for Monday as always. We said that was going to be a Sunday thing, wasn't it? The kind of how do you prepare for the week, and we've kind of navigated on something else, which works quite well. Thank you to everyone at Teacher Talk Radio. It is a proper radio station.
Oh, we are a proper radio station.
Don't let the criticism on Twitter kind of...
Yes, I may have got myself into a bit of a Twitter spat with a shock jock from a rival talk radio station, which is well beneath us, because we're so much more intelligent, factual, and knowledgeable. Yeah, we
can actually back our stuff. And I put some stuff up on Twitter today, so people can follow along. So listen out for us on social media during the week. We'll promote what we're doing next.
Absolutely. And thank you to Paul today for his contributions and for his anecdotal story of his treasures being split. God bless. And thank you for all that you've done listening in to us. Please like, share, subscribe, as they say on YouTube. And we'll obviously talk to you again in about 2 weeks' time.
And true to form, we've gone 3 minutes over.
It's only 5. Should we just keep talking to 5 minutes?
We could just keep going, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Who thinks we should carry on for 2 minutes? So just quickly then, while we're doing this, do you think the strike will go ahead on the 15th? Or do you think
strike will hit the 15th.
Or do you think there'll be mitigations?
London rally on the 15th, strike on the 15th, and strike on the 16th.
Do you think we'll get there, or do you think there'll be?
I think we're.
You don't think it's something?
I don't think the government's going to negotiate this at this turn. I think we're locked in potentially to the second and the third and fourth strikes.
Do you not think once this thing is sorted with the nurses that it could also snowball?
Well, Scotland seems to be starting sorted, and there seems to be movement there. So, like everything else that happened during COVID, Scotland goes first and we go second. It seems to be the way these days that Scotland goes first with everything. But also, it's quite interesting. I think there's going to be some fallout as regards, definitely about schools, about the release of those WhatsApps, and I know that. Kevin and Mary, Uncle Kevin's and Auntie Mary, aren't very happy with the release of those, proving exactly what we knew was going on. And again, we were talking about that this morning, about, and I think that may, in many ways, galvanise the teaching profession to know that we were right and we stepped up. And I think the release of those is nothing good short of actually making us probably stronger in our conviction to I suppose, hold the government to account, because education is worth fighting for, our kids are worth fighting for, our jobs are worth fighting for, and the future of our own children is worth fighting for, because they're in the education system, and we both feel passionately and strongly about that. And I feel a lot of loyalty, and I feel very strongly about protecting my colleagues, because we are a noble profession of people who give selflessly and altruistically of others. And I did have a spat last night with somebody who asked how much I earn. And I posted up to them that Taylor Malik, the comedian in America, absolute cracking sketch when he says, "How much do you earn? How much do you make?" is the actual YouTube, and I must post that up. And it's a lovely, lovely little comedian sort of take on the things that we do that money can never buy. The small things that money can never buy, that kind word to a child. What's interesting is we always hear these adverts on television which talk about that type of thing, coming from the individuals who aren't actually helping us, which I think is quite ironic. But there we go. We've gone 5 minutes.
Right, cool. We've done the 5 minutes. Right, have a great week, and we'll catch you up in the week. See you later, guys. All the best.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.